You're making a mistake, old man. Walk away now or you'll regret ever stepping foot in this barn. Walter Hayes stood perfectly still in the doorway of his own barn, his weathered hand gripping a tin coffee pot, staring down 7 leather-clad strangers who'd turned his sanctuary into their hideout. The leader, a mountain of a man with cold blue eyes and a scar running down his jaw, didn't blink. Neither did Walter. "I don't regret much anymore, son," Walter said quietly. "At 97, you run out of things to fear." Before we continue with what happened next in this incredible true story, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button right now because this story takes turns you won't believe, and I don't want you to miss a single moment. Stay with me on until the very end, you'll understand why. And drop a comment telling me what city you are watching from. I want to see just how far Walter's story travels. Now let's get back to that barn in Montana where everything was about to change. The morning had started like every other morning for the past 40 years. Walter woke at 5:30, his bones protesting, as they always did, the empty side of the bed, still neat and untouched where Margaret used to sleep. 3 years she'd been gone, but he still kept her pillow fluffed, still brewed enough coffee for 2 out of habit. The farmhouse creaked around him, familiar as his own heartbeat, every groan and whisper of settling wood, a conversation he'd been having since 1962. He'd pulled on his work clothes, the same flannel shirt he'd worn yesterday, the day before that, the week before that, and headed out to check on the barn. Not that there was much to check anymore. No livestock, no machinery that still ran, just empty stalls and memories stacked like hay bales in the corners. The bank had been calling again. 3 months behind on property taxes. He'd stopped answering. But when Walter pushed open the barn door that October morning, the familiar scent of old wood and dust hit him alongside something else. Motor oil, leather, cigarette smoke. And then he saw them. 7 motorcycles lined up like sleeping steel horses. 7 men sprawled across his barn floor using their jackets as pillows, their boots still on their faces hard even in sleep. One of them had blood on his shirt. Another's knuckles were split and raw. Walter should have backed away. Should have called Sheriff Morrison. Should have done 100 sensible things that a 97-year-old man alone on a failing farm ought to do when he finds the Hells Angels sleeping in his barn. Instead, he stood there with his coffee pot and studied them. The youngest couldn't have been more than 25, his face smooth except for a fresh bruise blooming purple across his cheekbone. The oldest was maybe 50, gray, threading through his beard, a tattoo of a screaming eagle visible where his sleeve had ridden up. But it was the one in the center who caught Walter's attention, the big blonde one with the scar, even in sleep, radiating something dangerous, something coiled and ready. Walter had seen men like this before. Okinawa, 1945. Different uniforms, same eyes. Men who'd seen things done, things cross lines they could never uncross. He was still standing there, still deciding when those eyes opened. The big man didn't jolt awake, didn't scramble, just went from sleep to full alertness in the space of a heartbeat, his hand moving to something at his belt. "Don't," Walter said simply. The word hung in the dusty air between them. The biker's hand stopped. His eyes, ice blue and calculating, swept over Walter from head to toe, taking in the stooped shoulders, the liver-spotted hands, the thin white hair, the complete absence of threat. "You the owner?" the man asked. His voice was gravel and smoke. "Have been for 63 years. "You alone," Walter nodded. The biker sat up slowly, and the movement woke the others. Within seconds, all 7 were on their feet, hands on weapons Walter couldn't see, but knew were there. The youngest one looked panicked. The gray-bearded one looked resigned, but the leader just looked tired. "We had engine trouble," he said. "Needed a place to lay low for a few hours. We're leaving now." "You're hurt," Walter observed, nodding toward the one with blood on his shirt. "I said we're leaving." "I heard you. I'm saying you're hurt and it's going to rain." Walter glanced toward the barn door where the sky had gone the color of old bruises. "You won't make it 10 miles in what's coming." The leader's jaw tightened. "We've made it through worse." "I'm sure you have, but you're in my barn on my land, and I'm offering you shelter until the storm passes. You can take it or leave it, but either way, I'm going back to the house to finish my coffee." He turned to go. "Why?" The word stopped him. The leader had taken a step forward. "Why would you help us? You know who we are." Walter looked back at him. "I know you're bleeding on my barn floor. I know you're running from something. Beyond that, I don't know a damn thing, and at my age, I've learned that's usually the best way to keep it. Old man, name's Walter. Walter Hayes. You want to keep calling me old man? That's fine, but we might as well be civil about this. The biker stared at him for a long moment. Then incredibly, the corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. Dylan Carter. They call me Grave. Cheerful, Walter said dryly. You boys want coffee or not, I'm not making a second pot. That's how it started. That's how 7 members of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club ended up sitting in Walter Hayes' kitchen drinking coffee from mismatched mugs while rain hammered against the windows and thunder rolled across the Montana plains. Dylan Graves sat at the head of the table which had been Margaret's seat, but Walter didn't say anything about it. The injured one, a lean Hispanic man named Carlos, had let Walter clean the knife wound across his ribs. Not deep, but it needed stitches. Walter had stitched plenty of things in his time. Cattle horses his own leg once when he'd been too stubborn to drive to town. You do this before? Carlos asked through gritted teeth as Walter worked. Some. Where'd you learn? War, the kind where medics were in short supply and dying was common. The room went quiet except for the rain and Carlos's sharp intakes of breath. Which war? The young one asked. His name was Jake, and he had the kind of face that still believed in things. The big one, Pacific Theater. You're shitting me, Jake breathed. You fought in World War II. I was there. Don't know that I'd call what I did fighting. Mostly I just tried not to die. Walter tied off the last stitch. There, keep it clean and dry. Should heal fine if infection doesn't set in. Thanks, Carlos muttered. Walter washed his hands in the sink, watching the pink water swirl down the drain. Behind him, the bikers were tense coiled still, not trusting this. He didn't blame them. So, he said, not turning around, you going to tell me what you are running from? Or are we going to keep pretending this is just a social visit? The silence stretched so long he thought they wouldn't answer. Then Dylan spoke. There's another club, the Iron Brotherhood. We've had disagreements. Disagreements that end with knives. The kind that end a lot worse than that. Dylan's voice was flat. We hit one of their meth operations 2 days ago, burned it to the ground. They've been hunting us ever since. Walter finally turned around. Meth. We don't deal that poison, Dylan said sharply. Never have. But the Brotherhood does, and they've been pushing it in towns is where kids get hooked. Our kids, so we push back. Vigilante justice. Justice is justice. Walter studied him. That how you got that scar, Justice? Dylan's hand moved unconsciously to his jaw. That's an older story. I imagine you've got a lot of those. More than I can count. The gray-bearded one who'd been introduced as Marcus spoke up. We'll be gone as soon as the rain stops. You've done enough, more than enough. We don't want to bring trouble to your door. Trouble's already here, Walter said. Question is what we do about it. Dylan's eyebrows rose. My barn, my property, my decision. Walter poured himself another cup of coffee. How many are hunting you? 20, maybe 30? Hard to say. The Brotherhood's got chapters across 3 states. And you're 7. We're enough. You're outnumbered and outgunned, son. That's not confidence, that's suicide. Dylan's eyes went cold. You don't know what we can do. No, but I know what you can't do, Anu. You can't fight 30 men out in the open. You need an advantage. You need ground you can control. And you're offering us that ground. Walter sipped his coffee. I'm saying that if they come here looking for you, they're going to find an old man who doesn't take kindly to trespassers. What happens after that? Well, I guess we'll see. Jake was shaking his head. Man, you're crazy. You know that? You're actually crazy. Probably, Walter agreed. But I'm also the only help you've got right now, so you might want to reconsider the name calling. Marcus leaned forward. Why? Why would you risk this? You don't know us. You don't owe us anything. Walter was quiet for a moment, looking down into his coffee cup, seeing ghosts in the dark liquid. I had a grandson, he said finally. David, good kid, smart, wanted to be a teacher. When he was 19, he got hooked on pills. Oxy, started with a football injury, ended with him stealing from his own mother to feed the habit. We tried everything, rehab, tough love, prayers, nothing worked. What happened to him? Dylan asked quietly. Found him in a motel room in Billings 3 years ago, overdose. The pills were laced with fentanyl. He never had a chance. Walter's hands were steady on his cup, but his voice wasn't. The dealers who sold him that poison, they're still out there, still selling, still killing kids, because nobody stopped them. The kitchen was silent except for the rain. So maybe you're criminals, Walter continued. Maybe you've done things I wouldn't approve of. But if you're fighting the people who sell that poison, if you're trying to stop what happened to my David from happening to someone else's grandson, he looked up, meeting Dylan's eyes. Then maybe for once I can do something that matters, something that might have saved him if someone had done it sooner. Dylan stared at him for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Okay, but if they come, you get in the house and you stay there. This isn't your fight. The hell it isn't, Walter said simply. That's when they heard it, the distant rumble of engines growing louder. Dylan was on his feet instantly, moving to the window. Shit, they found us. How many? Marcus demanded. Can't tell yet. At least a dozen bikes, maybe more. Carlos struggled to stand, wincing. We need to move. Now. But Walter was already walking toward the door. Where are you going? Dylan grabbed his arm. Walter looked down at the hand on his arm, then up at Dylan. I'm going to talk to them. Are you insane? They'll kill you. Maybe, or maybe they'll listen to an old man who just wants his property left in peace. He gently removed Dylan's hand. You boys stay here. Stay quiet. Let me handle this. Walter. But he was already out the door, walking into the rain, his thin frame outlined against the gray afternoon light. The bikers looked at each other. He's going to get himself killed, Jake said. Dylan was watching through the window, his jaw tight. Yeah, probably. We can't let him do this alone, Marcus said. He's not asking for our help. He's giving us a chance. A chance to what? Hide while an old man fights our battle. Dylan's hands clenched into fists. A chance to not get him killed in the crossfire. You want to help him? You stay quiet and you stay ready. If this goes south, we move fast and we move hard. Understood? Reluctant nods around the room. Outside, Walter walked down his gravel drive toward the approaching engines. The rain soaked through his flannel shirt in seconds, plastering his white hair to his skull. He should have been cold, should have been terrified, but mostly he just felt calm. Purpose. For the first time in 3 years since Margaret died, since David died, since the farm started dying around him, he felt like he had a reason to be standing up straight. The motorcycles came into view around the bend, a rolling wall of chrome and leather and rage. They spread out across the road, blocking any escape, their engines rumbling like thunder-made machine. Walter stopped in the middle of his driveway and waited. The lead bike pulled forward. The rider was massive, even bigger than Dylan, with a shaved head and a beard that reached his chest. Tattoos covered every inch of visible skin. When he killed his engine, the silence was almost as loud as the noise had been. You the owner of this property? The man demanded. I am. You alone. As you can see. The man dismounted and several others followed. They surrounded Walter in a loose circle, predatory and deliberate. We're looking for some people, the leader said. 7 men on bikes. They would have come through here in the last few hours. You seen them? Walter looked him in the eye. I've seen a lot of things in 97 years. You'll have to be more specific. Don't play games with me, old man. We know they came this way. Their tracks lead right to your property. A lot of roads lead through here. It's a public highway last time I checked. The leader stepped closer, close enough that Walter could smell the whiskey on his breath. You protecting them. I'm protecting my property, which you're currently trespassing on. A laugh rippled through the circle of bikers. The leader didn't laugh. You got balls, I'll give you that. But you're old and you're alone and you're in the way. Last chance. Where are they? Walter didn't blink. Get off my land. For a moment, he thought the man might actually hit him. Saw it in his eyes, the casual violence of someone who'd crossed that line so many times it didn't even register anymore. Then a voice cut through the tension. He said, get off his land. Dylan stood on the porch and behind him the other 6 had emerged, spread out ready. The leader's face split into a grin. There you are, Grave. I was starting to think you'd gone soft, hiding behind an old man. I wasn't hiding. I was giving you a chance to walk away. You should take it. 7 against 15. You sure about that math? I'm sure you're outnumbered. By what, you and Grandpa? By something you don't understand. Dylan stepped off the porch, walking slowly toward them. See, you made a mistake. You came onto this man's property, threatened him, disrespected him, and now you're going to pay for it. Big talk. Not talk, promise. The leader pulled a gun. 3 of his men did the same. Last chance, Grave. You and your boys walk away. Leave the old man. We got no beef with him. Dylan kept walking. Can't do that. Then you're all dead. Maybe, but so are you. Walter, still standing in the rain between the 2 groups, spoke quietly. Enough. Everyone looked at him. You want to fight, Walter said, looking at the Brotherhood leader. You'll get one, but not here, not on my property. You want Dylan and his boys, you come back tonight. Midnight, just you and them. No guns, no backup, fair fight. The leader laughed. Why the hell would I agree to that? Because if you don't, I call the sheriff. Tell him about the meth operation Dylan mentioned. The one you're running over in Chester, the one you've been using to poison kids. The laughter stopped. You're bluffing. You willing to bet your operation on it? Walter's voice was steel. Midnight, fair fight, or I make one phone call and bring law enforcement down on your head so hard you'll wish you just fought fair. The 2 men stared at each other. Then slowly the Brotherhood leader holstered his gun. Midnight, here, you and your grave, we settle this. We'll be here, Dylan said. The Brotherhood mounted up. In seconds they were gone, engine roar fading into the rain. Walter stood there, dripping until the sound disappeared completely. Then his knees buckled. Dylan caught him before he hit the ground. Jesus, Walter. I'm fine, just give me a minute. They helped him back to the house, sat him down, wrapped him in blankets. His hands were shaking now, the adrenaline finally catching up with him. That was the stupidest, bravest thing I've ever seen, Marcus said softly. It was the only play we had, Walter managed. You bought us time, Dylan said, but midnight is 6 hours away, and when they come back, they're not coming to fight fair. You know that, right? Walter looked up at him. I know. Then why did you do it? Because sometimes, son, you have to make a stand, even if you know you're going to lose. Especially then. He was quiet for a moment. Besides, I didn't say we were going to fight fair either. Dylan's eyes narrowed. What are you thinking? Walter's smile was thin and cold and absolutely terrifying on a 97-year-old man's face. I'm thinking it's time I showed you boys why the Viet Cong never managed to take our position on Okinawa even when they outnumbered us 3-1. You're serious? Son, I'm 97 years old alone on a failing farm with nothing left to lose and a chance to do something that matters. I've never been more serious in my life. He stood up, blanket falling away, and walked to a closet in the corner. When he opened it, the bikers saw something they didn't expect. Weapons, military grade, carefully maintained. Enough firepower to hold off a small army. Holy shit, Jake breathed. Walter pulled out a rifle, checked the action, nodded in satisfaction. My father-in-law was a gun collector. Paranoid old bastard thought the government was coming for him and left me his entire collection when he died. I've kept them clean, kept them ready just in case. He looked at Dylan. I'd say this qualifies. Marcus was shaking his head. You're actually planning to fight them. I'm planning to defend my property. There's a difference. Walter started pulling out more weapons, laying them on the table. Now you boys have 6 hours to decide. You can leave right now, head west, maybe get clear before they regroup. Or you can stay and help an old man teach some drug dealers what happens when you threaten the wrong property. The 7 bikers looked at each other. Dylan spoke first. We stay. You're sure? You put your life on the line for us, for strangers, for criminals. Dylan's voice was rough. Nobody's done that for us. Ever. So yeah, we stay, we fight, and we make damn sure you survive this. Walter nodded slowly. Then we have work to do, and not much time to do it. As the rain continued to fall and afternoon faded toward evening, in a small farmhouse in rural Montana, an alliance was forged between 7 outlaws and one 97-year-old man who decided that tonight, finally, he had something worth fighting for. The question was whether they'd live to see morning. The first thing Walter did was send Jake to the barn. There's a toolbox under the 3rd stall from the left. Bring it here, all of it. Jake looked confused but didn't argue. He was back in 3 minutes hauling a metal box that looked like it hadn't been opened in decades. Walter knelt beside it, his arthritic fingers working the combination lock like he'd done it yesterday. Inside were things that made the bikers go quiet. Tripwires, claymore components, detonators, carefully wrapped in oiled cloth preserved like museum pieces. Jesus Christ, Marcus whispered. Where did you get this stuff? Kept it after the war. Told myself I'd turn it in someday. Never got around to it. Walter's hands moved with surprising steadiness, checking each piece. Some things you hold on to just in case the world needs you to remember who you used to be. Dylan crouched beside him. You actually know how to use all this. I taught demolitions for 6 months in 45. Trained new recruits before they shipped out. Walter looked up, his eyes suddenly distant. 18-year-old kids who thought war was adventure. Half of them never made it home. The ones who did, they knew how to make every inch of ground cost the enemy something. You're talking about turning your farm into a battlefield, Carlos said. I'm talking about survival. They're coming with 15, maybe 20 men. We're 8. We can't win straight up, so we don't fight straight up. He pulled out a map of the property, hand-drawn, every tree and fence line marked. We make them fight on our terms. Every step they take, we make them pay for it. Marcus studied the map. You've been planning this. I've been preparing for this my whole life, just didn't know when I'd need it. Dylan spread the map on the table. Walk us through it. For the next hour, Walter transformed from a frail old farmer into something else entirely. His voice grew stronger, more certain, as he outlined fields of fire and kill zones, choke points, and fallback positions. The bikers listened, and with each word, they understood they weren't dealing with some naive old man playing soldier. They were dealing with someone who'd survived hell and learned its lessons. The driveway is the obvious approach, Walter said, pointing. They'll expect us to defend from the house, so we won't. We'll let them come in, let them think they've got us cornered, then we close the trap. What trap? Jake asked. Walter's finger moved across the map. There's a drainage ditch that runs parallel to the driveway hidden by tall grass, deep enough for 2 men to lay flat. They come in, you hit them from the side. Not to kill, just to scatter them, make them panic. Then what? Then they'll pull back to regroup, probably to the old barn foundation about 50 yards out. That's where we want them. He tapped another spot. I've got propane tanks buried there from when we were going to add a shop building. Never did. But the tanks are still there, still full. Dylan's eyes widened. You're going to blow them up. I'm going to make them think twice about pushing forward. After that, they'll be disorganized, angry, making mistakes. That's when we finish it. And if they don't fall for it, Marcus asked, then we improvise. But one thing I learned in the war plans fall apart the second the shooting starts. What matters is being able to adapt faster than the enemy. Carlos winced as he shifted his weight. You really think 8 of us can hold off 20? I think 8 people defending their home have an advantage over 20 people attacking it, especially when those 20 don't know what they're walking into. Walter folded the map. But I need to know right now, and are you willing to do what needs to be done? Because once this starts, there's no halfway. Either we commit completely or we don't do it at all. The room went silent. Then Dylan stood up. We're in, all the way. The others nodded, even Jake, though his hands were shaking. Good, Walter said. Then let's get to work. They moved fast. Dylan and Marcus took the tripwires, setting them along the approaches Walter indicated. Carlos, despite his injury, helped Jake position the weapons rifles at windows, shotguns near doors. Everything within quick reach. Walter worked on the propane tanks, rigging them with detonators he'd kept preserved for 60 years, his fingers remembering movements his mind had tried to forget. By 8 o'clock, the rain had stopped, leaving everything slick and gleaming in the fading light. By 9, the sun was gone and darkness settled over the farm like a held breath. Walter made sandwiches. Nobody was hungry, but he insisted they eat. Empty stomach makes you slow, he said, setting plates in front of them. You'll need your strength. Dylan took a sandwich, but didn't eat it. You should leave. Get in your truck, drive to town, stay with someone. This is my home. It's going to be a war zone in 3 hours. Then I guess I'll be in a war zone. Walter bit into his own sandwich. I've been in them before. At least this time I know the terrain. You could die tonight. Walter looked at him calmly. Son, I'm 97. I could die crossing the kitchen. At least this way, if I go, I'll go doing something that matters. Jake spoke up, his voice cracking slightly. What if we all die? Then we die making a stand against people who poison children. I've seen a lot of ways to go. That's not the worst. You're insane, Jake said, but there was respect in his voice now. Probably. Walter finished his sandwich. But sanity's overrated. Margaret used to tell me that. She'd say, Walter, you're the most sensibly insane man I've ever met. I miss her voice. How long were you married? Marcus asked quietly. 58 years. Met her at a church social in 1947. She was wearing a yellow dress and she laughed at my jokes even though they weren't funny. Married her 6 months later. His eyes were distant. We had 2 children. Both gone now. Car accident took Sarah in '83. Heart attack took Michael in '09. David was Michael's boy. Only grandchild we had. I'm sorry, Dylan said. Me too, but grief is just love with nowhere to go. Margaret taught me that too before the cancer took her. He stood up, collecting plates. You boys should get some rest. We've got 2 hours before midnight. Sleep while you can. You really think any of us can sleep? Carlos asked. No, but you should try anyway. They didn't sleep. They checked weapons, checked positions, checked each other. Small conversations in the darkness, the kind men have when they think they might not see morning. Jake sat on the porch steps smoking a cigarette with shaking hands. Marcus joined him. First time? Marcus asked. First time what? Facing death head on, knowing it's coming and choosing to stay anyway. Jake took a long drag. Yeah, you... No, but it never gets easier. Marcus was quiet for a moment. You don't have to do this. Walter's right, you could leave. Hell, we all could. And go where they'll find us eventually. At least here we've got a chance. That's not why you're staying. Jake looked at him. No, you're staying because that old man in there is willing to die for strangers, and it makes you ashamed of every time you didn't stand up for something that mattered. Jake was quiet for a long time. How'd you know? Because it's the same reason I'm staying. Inside, Dylan found Walter in the kitchen loading shells into a shotgun. You don't have to do this, Dylan said. This is our fight. You've already done more than... Stop, Walter interrupted. Just stop. I know what you're going to say and I appreciate it, but this is my choice. You don't get to take it away from me. I'm trying to protect you. I'm trying to protect you too. We're at an impasse. Walter set the shotgun aside. You remind me of someone. Hussam, my son, Michael. Same stubborn streak. Same need to shoulder everything yourself. He looked at Dylan directly. You carry a lot of weight, don't you? Leading these men, making decisions, being responsible for lives. Dylan's jaw tightened. That's the job. It's a hell of a job. One that eats at you from the inside if you let it. Walter poured 2 glasses of water, handed one to Dylan. How old were you when you got that scar? Dylan's hand moved to his jaw. 19. What happened? My father. He didn't like that I was leaving home, joining the club. Said I was throwing my life away. We fought. He came at me with a broken bottle. Dylan's voice was flat. I took it away from him. Could have used it on him. Didn't. Walked away instead. That was 15 years ago. Haven't seen him since. You ever regret it, walking away? Every day. And never. Both at the same time. Dylan drank the water. He was right in a way. I did throw away the life he wanted for me. College, career, family respectability. Chose the road instead. Chose brothers over blood. You think that makes you a bad person? I think it makes me what I am. Walter nodded slowly. My father beat me too. Every time I didn't measure up, which was often. When I came back from the war, he told me I should have stayed there, died there, because at least then he could have been proud of me. He set his glass down. I didn't speak to him for 20 years. When he died, I didn't go to the funeral. You regret that? Not for a second. Some people don't deserve forgiveness just because they're family. Some people earn their loneliness. He looked at Dylan. But you're not your father. And the fact that you worry about being a good person means you probably are one. Dylan laughed bitterly. I've done things, Walter. Things that would make you... Oh. I was at Okinawa, Walter said simply. I've done things too. We all have. The question isn't what we've done, it's what we do next. Before Dylan could respond, Carlos appeared in the doorway. They're early. Everyone moved at once. Positions, weapons, the careful choreography they'd planned now put into motion. Walter checked his watch. 11:15. 45 minutes early, Marcus muttered. They're not playing fair. Good, Walter said. Neither are we. They could hear the engines now, multiple bikes coming fast up the road. Headlights cut through the darkness, sweeping across the house. Dylan was at the window counting. I see 12 bikes, no 14. 15. More than we expected, Jake said, his voice tight. Doesn't matter, Walter said calmly. The plan stays the same. Carlos, Jake, you're in the ditch. Wait for my signal. The two men slipped out the back door, disappearing into the darkness. Marcus, you're upstairs, north window. Don't fire until they're committed. Marcus headed up his footsteps, heavy on the old stairs. Dylan, you're with me. We're going to greet them. Walter, they came early to catch us unprepared. We're going to show them just how wrong they are. The motorcycles stopped 50 yards from the house engines, idling headlights, creating a wall of glare. Men dismounted. Walter could see weapons, could see the casual way they held them, like this was just another Tuesday. The Brotherhood leader Walter had learned his name was Cutter, walked forward alone. Time's up, old man. We're done waiting. Walter stepped onto the porch, Dylan behind him. You're early. Deal was midnight. Deal's changed. We want Grave and his boys. Now, or we burn your house down with you in it. You really want to do this? I really don't want to waste any more time. Cutter raised his hand and his men spread out, surrounding the house. Last chance. Send them out or we come in. Walter sighed. I was afraid you'd say that. He whistled. The world exploded. The tripwires Dylan and Marcus had set along the flanking approaches detonated not with explosives but with flashbangs Walter had modified from old military surplus. Light and sound erupted simultaneously, blinding and deafening the men who'd been moving to surround the house. In that moment of chaos, Carlos and Jake rose from the drainage ditch and opened fire. They weren't aiming to kill, just as Walter had instructed. They were aiming for tires, for engines, for the motorcycles themselves. Shots rang out and bikes began toppling, gasoline spilling, making retreat impossible. Cutter's men scattered, some diving for cover, others returning blind fire, hitting nothing but darkness and empty air. Now, Walter shouted. Dylan fired 3 shots in rapid succession, each one precise, each one hitting a man in the leg or shoulder, taking them out of the fight without killing them. The Brotherhood was in disarray, exactly as Walter had predicted. They'd expected an easy target, maybe token resistance. They hadn't expected military tactics from a 97-year-old farmer and 7 bikers. Cutter was screaming orders, trying to rally his men, but panic had set in. They were retreating toward the old barn foundation, exactly where Walter wanted them. Hold fire, Walter said quietly. Dylan looked at him. Now. Walter pulled out a small radio detonator, the kind used for controlled demolitions. His thumb hovered over the button. Those men are going to die, Dylan said. Those men came here to kill us, to burn my home, to murder you and your brothers. Walter's voice was steady. I don't want to do this, but I will because the alternative is that we die instead. Walter, I need you to understand something. This isn't justice. This isn't heroism. This is survival, pure and simple. And if you can't live with what comes next, I need you to walk away right now. Dylan stared at him, then slowly he shook his head. I'm not walking away. Then get ready to live with it. Walter pressed the button. The propane tanks he'd buried beneath the old barn foundation ignited with a roar that shook the ground. Fire erupted into the night sky, a pillar of flame that turned darkness into day. Men screamed, diving away from the blast, rolling on the ground to extinguish burning clothes. But Walter had calculated the blast radius carefully. Close enough to terrify, close enough to burn, but not close enough to kill. Not if they moved fast. They moved fast. The Brotherhood scattered, some fleeing on foot, others limping toward bikes that were still operational. Cutter stood in the middle of the chaos, his face lit by flames, his expression one of absolute shock. Walter stepped off the porch, walking toward him with a rifle in his hands. I gave you a chance to walk away, Walter said. You didn't take it. Cutter's hand went to his gun, but Dylan's voice stopped him. Don't. Cutter looked up. Dylan stood on the porch, a rifle aimed directly at Cutter's head, the distance close enough that missing was impossible. It's over, Dylan said. Your bikes are destroyed. Your men are. You're running. You're alone. You think this ends here, Cutter spat. You think the Brotherhood will let this go? I think you're going to go back and tell them exactly what happened here tonight, Walter said calmly. You're going to tell them that you came onto private property with intent to kill, and you got exactly what you deserved. And you're going to tell them that if they come back, it won't be fire and flashbangs next time. It'll be worse. You're threatening me. I'm making you a promise. This is my land, my home, and I will defend it with everything I have. You want to test that again, you're welcome to Detroit, but I guarantee you won't like the results. For a long moment, Cutter just stared at him. Then incredibly, he started to laugh. You're crazy. You're actually crazy. So I've been told. Walter lowered his rifle slightly. Now get off my property and take your wounded with you. Cutter looked around at the chaos, at his men regrouping in the darkness, at the burning wreckage of what had been a simple hit turned into a nightmare. This isn't over, he said. Yes, Walter said quietly. It is. You just don't know it yet. Cutter backed away, never taking his eyes off Walter, then turned and started shouting orders. Within 10 minutes, the Brotherhood had gathered their wounded and disappeared into the night, leaving behind only burning wreckage and the acrid smell of gasoline and fear. Silence settled over the farm like snow. Dylan lowered his rifle, his hands shaking. We did it. We actually did it. Carlos and Jake emerged from the ditch, both unhurt but wide-eyed. Marcus came down from upstairs, his face pale. Nobody's dead, Marcus said, sounding shocked. You controlled all of that, and nobody's dead. Walter set his rifle down, suddenly feeling every one of his 97 years. Death isn't victory, it's just death. What we did tonight was send a message, that's all. What message, Jake asked. That some lines cannot be crossed without consequences. That some people will stand up even when it's easier to look away. Walter looked at each of them. You boys did good tonight, real good. Dylan was staring at the burning wreckage. They'll come back, maybe not tonight, maybe not tomorrow, but they'll come back. Maybe. Or maybe they'll decide this old farm isn't worth the cost. Walter started walking back to the house. Either way, we'll be ready. Inside, they collapsed into chairs, adrenaline draining away, leaving exhaustion in its wake. Walter made coffee again because that's what you did after surviving the impossible. You made coffee and you kept going. What you did out there, Carlos said slowly, the way you planned everything, controlled everything, that wasn't just military training. That was something else. Walter poured coffee with steady hands. After the war, I came home changed, angry, violent. I'd wake up swinging at ghosts. Margaret was afraid of me for the first year we were married. She had reason to be. He handed out cups, but she didn't leave. She stayed and she helped me find my way back to being human. Took years, took patience I didn't deserve, but she never gave up on me. What changed? Dylan asked. David was born, my grandson. I held that baby and I thought, I can't let him grow up around this anger, this violence, so I buried it, locked it away, became the man Margaret needed me to be, the grandfather David deserved. He sat down heavily, but tonight I had to dig it all back up, had to remember who I was before I learned to be gentle. And you know what scared me most? What? How easy it was, how naturally it all came back, like I'd never stopped being that 19-year-old kid who learned to kill without hesitation. Walter's hands trembled slightly around his cup. We're not who we used to be, but we're never as far from it as we'd like to think. The room was quiet except for the ticking of the old clock on the wall. Then Jake spoke, his voice small. My mom kicked me out when I was 16, said I was just like my dad, worthless and mean. I lived on the streets for 2 years before the club found me. Dylan gave me a place, gave me brothers, gave me purpose. He looked at Walter. You could have turned us away, should have turned us away, but you didn't. Why? Walter met his eyes. Because everybody deserves a chance to be more than their worst moment. Margaret taught me that too. She said people aren't their mistakes. They're what they do after making them. You really believe that? I married a woman who believed it about me. That's good enough. Marcus stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the darkness. The sun's going to come up in a few hours. When it does, what happens to us? What do you want to happen? Walter asked. I don't know. This life, the club, the road, it's all I've known for 30 years. But tonight, fighting for something that mattered, defending something worth defending. He turned back. It felt different. Felt like maybe there's more out there than just running and fighting and surviving day to day. There is, Walter said simply, but you have to choose it. Nobody can choose it for you. Dylan was quiet, staring into his coffee. Then he looked up. What if we stayed? Everyone turned to look at him. Stay, Carlos repeated. Not forever, but for a while. Help Walter fix up the farm. Repay the debt. Dylan's eyes were on Walter. You need help. The place is falling apart. We've got skills, muscle time. We could make it right. Walter blinked. You want to stay here? If you'll have us. Son, you don't owe me. The hell we don't. You saved our lives tonight. Put your own life on the line for strangers. That means something. That means everything. Dylan set his cup down. Let us do this. Let us give back even a fraction of what you gave us. Walter looked at each of them, saw the hope in their faces, the need to matter, to contribute, to be something more than outlaws running from their past. Okay, he said quietly. Okay, you can stay, but there are conditions. No drugs, no violence unless defending this property. And you earn your keep. This is a working farm, or it was once. We make it that again. Deal, Dylan said immediately. The others nodded agreement. Then I guess we're partners, Walter said, and held out his hand. Dylan shook it, and something passed between them. Respect, understanding, the beginning of something neither of them had expected to find. Outside, the sky was beginning to lighten darkness, giving way to gray, then pink, then gold. The burning wreckage had died down to smoking embers. The farm looked like a battlefield, scarred and scorched, but still standing. We should clean up, Marcus said, before anyone sees. They worked through the dawn, 7 bikers and 1 old man clearing debris, hiding evidence, making the farm look like nothing more than a quiet homestead where nothing ever happened. By the time the sun was fully up, you couldn't tell that 12 hours ago a war had been fought and won on this ground. Walter stood on his porch watching his unlikely allies work, and for the first time in 3 years, he didn't feel alone. Margaret would have liked them, he thought. She always had a soft spot for strays and broken things. Dylan joined him, wiping sweat from his forehead. What now? Walter smiled. Now we have breakfast. Then we get to work. Farm won't fix itself. You sure about this, about us staying? No, but I wasn't sure about a lot of things that turned out right. Marriage, parenthood, surviving war. He looked at Dylan. Sometimes you just have to trust that uncertainty is part of the plan. What plan? Life's plan, the one we don't get to write, only live through and hope we get more right than wrong. They stood there together watching the sun climb higher, burning away the last shadows of night, and neither of them said what they were both thinking, that something had changed. Something fundamental, and there was no going back to who they'd been before this moment. The road had led them here. What happened next was up to them. The first week, nobody talked much. They just worked. Dylan and Marcus rebuilt the fence line that had been sagging for years, their hands blistered and raw by the 3rd day. Carlos, despite his stitches, insisted on helping Jake clear the overgrown fields, pulling weeds that had grown tall as men. Walter directed them with quiet authority, showing them how things used to be, how they could be again. On the 8th day, Sheriff Morrison showed up. Walter was on the porch when the patrol car rolled up the driveway. He didn't move, just waited, coffee cup in hand. Morrison got out slowly, his belly preceding him, his eyes taking in everything. The bikers working the fields, the fresh lumber stacked by the barn, the motorcycles parked in a neat row. Walter, Morrison said carefully. Sheriff, got a call last week. Someone reported hearing explosions out this way. Gunfire. Wanted me to check it out. That's so. You know anything about that? Walter sipped his coffee. Had some trouble with trespassers. Ran them off. Morrison's eyes narrowed. What kind of trespassers? The kind that don't respect private property. Haven't seen them since. And these men, Morrison nodded toward the bikers, they helping you with your trespasser problem. They're helping me with the farm. Got too big for one old man to handle alone. Morrison walked closer, his hand resting casually on his belt near his gun. Walter, I've known you 40 years. You've never needed help with anything. Never asked for it, never wanted it. Now suddenly, you've got 7 bikers living on your property. You expect me to believe that as coincidence? I expect you to believe what I tell you. They're hired help, nothing more. Hired help with Hell's Angels patches on their jackets. Dylan appeared from around the corner of the house, his hands dirty, his expression neutral. Is there a problem, officer? Morrison sized him up. You got ID. In my jacket, inside. Get it. Dylan didn't move. Am I being detained? Not yet, but that can change real quick. Then respectfully, Sheriff, unless you've got a warrant or probable cause, I don't have to show you anything. Morrison's face flushed red. You want to play games, son? I want to work. I'm on private property. I'm not breaking any laws, and I'm helping an elderly man maintain his farm. If that's a crime, you better arrest all of us right now. The two men stared at each other. Walter could see Morrison's jaw working, could see him calculating whether this fight was worth having. Finally, Morrison looked back at Walter. You sure about this, about them? More sure than I've been about anything in years. They're criminals, Walter, whatever they told you. They told me the truth, that they were in trouble, that they needed help, that they'd work for their keep. So far, they've kept their word. That's more than I can say for a lot of supposedly upstanding citizens. Morrison shook his head slowly. You're making a mistake. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. The sheriff started back toward his car, then stopped. Those trespassers you mentioned, they report anything to you. Like what? Like maybe they'll be coming back. Walter met his eyes. If they do, I'll handle it then. Same as before. Morrison got in his car, but before he drove away, he rolled down the window. You call me if you need help, Walter. Real help. Not the kind that comes with motorcycle patches. I'll keep that in mind. They watched the patrol car disappear down the road. He's going to be a problem, Dylan said quietly. He's doing his bomb. Can't fault him for that. He doesn't trust us. He doesn't know you. There's a difference. Walter finished his coffee. But he knows me, and he knows I don't make decisions lightly. That'll buy us time. How much time? Enough. If we're smart about it. Jake came running from the barn, his face pale. We've got a problem. They found Marcus kneeling in the dirt behind the barn, staring at something in his hands. When they got closer, Walter saw it was a phone. Not Marcus's phone, someone else's. Found it buried under some debris we were clearing, and Marcus said. It's been receiving messages. Dylan took the phone, scrolled through. His expression went dark. It's one of the Brotherhoods. Must have dropped it during the fight. What do the messages say? Walter asked. They're looking for Cutter. He never reported back after that night. The club thinks something happened to him. Something did happen to him, Carlos said. We sent him running with his tail between his legs. Yeah, but they don't know that. Last anyone heard, he was heading here with 15 men. Now he's gone silent, and so are they. Dylan kept scrolling. They think we killed them. They think we ambushed and murdered their entire crew. Jesus, Jake whispered. Walter took the phone, read the messages himself. The tone was escalating from concern to angry to promising vengeance. The most recent message sent 2 hours ago made his blood run cold. Full chapter riding out tomorrow. Every member. Going to burn that farm to the ground and everyone on it. Marcus stood up. How many is full chapter? 40, maybe 50. Dylan's hands were shaking. We can't fight 50 men, Walter. Not even with your tricks and traps. That's a small army. Then we don't fight them. We run. We call Cutter. We tell him what happened. We clear this up before it becomes a massacre. You think he'll answer? We have to try. Dylan found Cutter's number in the phone's contacts, hit call. It rang 4 times 5, then someone picked up. Who is this? Cutter's voice was harsh, suspicious. It's Dylan Carter. Grave. Silence. Then how'd you get this number? We found one of your guys' phones. Been reading your messages. Cutter, you need to call off your chapter. Nobody died that night. You know that. You were there. I know you're a lying piece of shit who booby-trapped an old man's property and nearly killed my brothers. We defended ourselves. You came to kill us. We stopped you. That's all. That's all. You humiliated us. Made us look weak. You think the Brotherhood's going to let that stand? Dylan's voice stayed steady. I think you're going to tell them the truth, that you attacked first, that we had every right to defend ourselves, and that if you come back, more people will get all hurt, people who don't need to. Cutter laughed bitter and cold. You don't get it. This isn't about right or wrong. This is about respect. You made us look like fools. That debt gets paid in blood. Then you're going to get a lot of your brothers killed over pride. Better than living as cowards. Cutter, listen to me. The line went dead. Dylan stared at the phone's voice. He's not calling it off. They're coming. Walter sat down on an overturned bucket, suddenly looking every year of his age. Then we leave, all of us, tonight. Let them have the farm. Walter, no, this isn't your fight anymore. It's mine and I'm ending it. You boys pack up, head out, get clear. I'll stay and explain to them what happened, take whatever comes. They'll kill you, Marcus said flatly. Maybe, but that's better than getting all of you killed too. Dylan crouched in front of him. You think we're going to let you sacrifice yourself after everything? I think you're going to be smart enough to survive. That's what I think. We're not leaving you. Yes, you are. That's an order. You're not my commander, Walter. You're my friend, and friends don't abandon each other. Dylan stood up. We fought together. We stay together. That's how this works. The others nodded agreement, even Jake, though terror was written across his young face. Walter looked at them, these 7 men who'd become something he never expected, family in the way that mattered most. Not blood, but choice. You're all idiots, he said, but his voice broke on the word. Yeah, Dylan agreed. We learned from the best. They spent the rest of the day preparing, not for defense this time, but for something else. Walter called it Plan B. If they're bringing 50 men, we can't beat them, he explained, but we can make them not want to fight in the first place. How? Carlos asked. We give them what they want. An apology, reparations, a way to save face without bloodshed. You're going to apologize to them? Jake was incredulous. After they tried to kill us, I'm going to give them an out, a way to feel like they won without anyone dying. It's called diplomacy, son. Sometimes it's the only weapon that works. And if they don't accept, Walter's expression hardened, then we've got Plan C. He didn't explain what Plan C was. Nobody asked. That night, Walter sat down and wrote a letter. His handwriting was shaky, his words carefully chosen. When he finished, he sealed it in an envelope and addressed it to the president of the Iron Brotherhood's Montana chapter. Marcus, you're going to deliver this tomorrow morning, early, before they ride out. Me, you're the oldest, most likely to be taken seriously. You give them this letter, you wait for a response, and you come back. No heroics, no arguments, just deliver and return. Marcus took the letter, felt its weight. What's in it? A chance. Whether they take it is up to them. Marcus left before dawn, his bike cutting through the morning darkness. The others waited tense and silent as the sun climbed higher and the hours ticked past. He returned at noon. They read it, Marcus said, dismounting. The president, a guy named Reaper. He read it twice. Then he laughed. Walter's face didn't change. And he said he'll come, just at him, alone, tonight at sunset. He wants to talk. That's good, Walter said. Could be a trap? Could be, but it's the only chance we've got. Sunset came too fast and too slow at the same time. Walter changed into clean clothes, his best shirt, the one Marguerite had bought him for their 50th anniversary. His hands trembled as he buttoned it. Dylan wanted to stand with him. Walter refused. This conversation happens one-on-one, or it doesn't happen at all. You boys stay in the barn, stay armed, stay ready. But you don't show yourselves unless I give the signal. What signal? If I take off my hat, you come running. Otherwise, you stay put. Walter, trust me, please. They did, though it clearly cost them. The motorcycle arrived exactly at sunset, a single rider silhouetted against the orange sky. He parked at the end of the driveway and walked the rest of the way, his hands visible and empty. Reaper was older than Walter expected, maybe 60, with iron gray hair, pulled back in a ponytail, and eyes that had seen everything and been surprised by none of it. Walter met him halfway. You're Walter Hayes, Reaper said. I am. You wrote me a hell of a letter. I wrote you the truth. Truth's a flexible concept in our world. Not in mine. They stood 10 feet apart, 2 old men on a dying farm, the weight of 50 lives hanging between them. You offered reparations, Reaper said, $10,000 for damages to our bikes, our pride, our reputation. That's right. You got that kind of money. I'll get it. Mortgage the farm if I have to. Reaper's eyebrows rose. You'd lose your home to pay us off. I'd lose my home to prevent a bloodbath, yes. Why, these men aren't your family, aren't your responsibility. You could have called the cops that first night, washed your hands of the whole mess. Walter met his eyes. Could have, didn't, can't change that now. You know what I think? Reaper stepped closer. I think you're a sentimental old fool who doesn't know when to quit. I think you've got some misguided notion that you can save these men from themselves, from their past, from what they are. Maybe, or maybe I know exactly what I'm doing, which is giving people a second chance, same as someone once gave me. Reaper studied him for a long moment. Then he smiled, and it was neither kind nor cruel, just tired. You remind me of someone, my father. He was stubborn too. Believed in things like honor and second chances. Got himself killed for it. I'm sorry. Don't be. He died doing what he thought was right. Not many people can say that. Reaper pulled out a cigarette, lit it, offered one to Walter. Walter declined. Here's the thing, Walter. I don't want your money. I don't want your farm. What I want is something you can't give me. What's that? Respect for my club, for my brothers, for the code we live by. He took a long drag. Cutter came here with 15 men to handle a problem. He left with his tail between his legs, humiliated, defeated by an old man and 7 outcasts. That story's already spreading. Other clubs are laughing at us, calling us weak, calling us soft. So this is about reputation. This is about survival. A club that looks weak doesn't survive long. Someone always comes to test you, always. Then what do you need from me? Reaper flicked ash onto the ground. A different story. One where we don't look like idiots and you don't look like a hero. One where everyone saves face and walks away breathing. I'm listening. We tell people we came here, realized Grave and his boys were under protection, and we respected that. Old code, hospitality, sacred ground, whatever bullshit sounds good. Point is, we backed off out of respect, not fear. And in exchange, Grave and his boys leave Montana tonight. They ride out, they don't come back. This territory belongs to the Brotherhood. They want to stay alive. They stay gone. Walter felt something crack inside his chest. That wasn't the deal. It's the deal now. Take it or leave it. They're staying. They're helping me rebuild. We had an arrangement. Arrangements change. This is the only way everyone survives. Let me talk to them. No talking. No negotiating. You decide right now, old man. They leave or tomorrow 50 men ride in here and nobody walks away. Not you, not them, not anyone. Walter's hands clenched into fists. Everything in him wanted to fight, to rage, to refuse. But he looked at Reaper's face and saw the truth there. This wasn't a bluff. This wasn't posturing. This was a man backed into a corner making the only play he had left. Give me 1 hour, Walter said quietly. You've got 10 minutes. That's not enough time. 10 minutes, starting now. Reaper checked his watch. Walter turned and walked toward the barn, his heart hammering, his mind racing. When he opened the door, 7 faces looked at him with hope and fear mixed together. What did he say? Dylan asked. Walter told them. The silence that followed was crushing. Jake spoke first. We're not leaving you. You don't have a choice. The hell we don't. We made a promise. We stay together. If you stay, you die. All of us die. Is that what you want? I want to fight, Jake said, his voice breaking. I want to stand up to these bastards and make them pay for thinking they can just push people around. And then what? You win the fight, you lose the war. They'll keep coming. More of them, always more. Walter's voice was gentle. This isn't about courage, son. It's about survival. Smart survival. Marcus was shaking his head. There has to be another way. There isn't. I've been around long enough to know when you're beat. This is one of those times. Dylan hadn't said anything. He just stood there staring at the ground, his fists clenched so tight his knuckles were white. Dylan, Walter said softly, you saved our lives. You gave us purpose. You made us feel like we mattered. Dylan looked up and his eyes were wet. And now you're asking us to just ride away and leave you here alone. I'm asking you to live. That's all. Just live. Living isn't enough. Not anymore. Not after this. It has to be. Carlos stepped forward. What happens to you after we leave? I make my peace with Reaper. Pay the reparations. Go back to farming. Alone. I've been alone before. I can be alone again. That's not fair, Jake said. None of this is fair. No, Walter agreed. It's not. But life rarely is. They stood there, these 7 men who'd become brothers, who'd become something more, and Walter could see the moment they understood. The moment they accepted that sometimes the only way to win was to walk away. Dylan wiped his eyes. Tonight, as soon as Reaper leaves, you pack up, you ride out, you don't look back. Where do we go? Somewhere the Brotherhood doesn't have territory. California maybe, Arizona, somewhere you can start fresh. And we just forget about you, pretend none of this happened. You remember it, you carry it with you, you let it change you. But you keep living. That's how you honor what we did here. Marcus pulled Walter into a hug, sudden and fierce. Thank you for everything. The others followed one by one until Walter was surrounded by these broken, beautiful men, and he thought of Margaret, of David, of all the people he'd loved and lost, and he understood that love was always, always worth the pain of goodbye. When he walked back to Reaper, his face was composed, his decision made. They'll leave tonight. Reaper nodded slowly. Smart choice. Don't patronize me. You got what you wanted. Don't pretend it's anything more than that. Fair enough. Reaper extended his hand. No hard feelings. Walter looked at the hand, then at the man. Nothing but hard feelings, but I'll shake anyway because that's what civilized people do. They shook, and it felt like defeat and survival mixed together. Reaper mounted his bike. Before he started it, he looked back. For what it's worth, you did a good thing here. Tried to save men who probably didn't deserve saving. That takes guts. They deserved it, Walter said firmly. Every one of them. Maybe, but the world doesn't run on deserve. It runs on power. You just learned that the hard way. The bike roared to life and Reaper rode away into the gathering darkness. Walter stood alone in his driveway watching the tail light disappear and felt something inside him crumble, not break, just crumble like old mortar between bricks, the thing that had been holding him together, finally giving way to gravity and time. Behind him, he heard the barn door open, heard the sound of motorcycles starting, heard the voices of men saying goodbye to a dream they'd only just begun to believe in. Dylan was the last to leave. He stopped his bike next to Walter, his face illuminated by the headlight. I'll come back, Dylan said. When it's safe, when enough time has passed, I'll come back and check on you. Don't. It's not worth the risk. You're worth it. Walter gripped the handlebar of Dylan's bike. You know what you do with this second chance I gave you? You don't waste it. You find something worth building, worth protecting, worth being. You understand me? I understand. And Dylan, Walter's voice broke. You were a good man when you got here. Don't let the world convince you otherwise. Dylan nodded, unable to speak, then throttled the engine and rode away. One by one, they all did until Walter stood alone in the silence they left behind. He walked back to the house, his steps heavy, his heart heavier. Inside, everything looked the same. Margaret's picture on the mantle, David's school photo next to it, the coffee maker ready for tomorrow's brew. But everything had changed. Walter sat at the kitchen table, the same table where 7 strangers had become family, and he let himself cry. Not for what he'd lost, but for what they'd found and had to leave behind. Tomorrow he would mortgage the farm, would pay Reaper his blood money, would go back to being alone. But tonight, just for tonight, he let himself feel it. The grief, the pride, the impossible, terrible beauty of having mattered to someone even briefly. Outside the farm was quiet. Inside, an old man wept. And somewhere on a highway heading west, 7 bikers rode toward an uncertain future, carrying with them the memory of a 97-year-old farmer who taught them what it meant to stand for something, even when standing cost you everything. 3 weeks passed like years. Walter went through the motions. Coffee at dawn, chores that didn't need doing, silence that filled the house like water rising. He'd mortgaged the farm, paid Reaper, watched $10,000 disappear like smoke. The bank had given him 6 months to make the first payment. He had no idea how. On the 22nd day, Sheriff Morrison came back. Walter was fixing the porch railing when the patrol car pulled up. Morrison got out slower than usual, his face gray. Walter, we need to talk. About what? About Dylan Carter, about his crew. Morrison climbed the steps, wincing. They're dead, Walter. All 7 of them. The hammer fell from Walter's hand. What? Highway accident outside Bozeman. Semi-truck crossed the center line, hit them head on. Witnesses said they didn't have a chance. Morrison's voice was careful, watching Walter's reaction. I'm sorry, I know you'd gotten attached to them. Walter sat down hard on the step. Went home 4 days ago. Took this long to identify the bodies, tracked down next of kin. Wasn't much left to identify, truth be told. 4 days. I thought you should hear it from me before you saw it on the news or something. Walter stared at his hands. They weren't shaking. That was wrong. They should be shaking. Walter, you okay? Fine, I'm fine. Thank you for telling me. Morrison shifted his weight. There's something else. The truck driver, he survived. Says his brakes failed. Says he tried to stop, couldn't. Highway patrol's investigating, but it looks like mechanical failure. Convenient. What's that? Nothing, just thinking out loud. Morrison studied him. You think it wasn't an accident? I think 7 men who survived a war with the Iron Brotherhood dying in a freak accident 4 days after leaving my protection seems awful coincidental. But what do I know? I'm just an old farmer. Walter, if you know something, I know they're dead. That's all I know. That's all that matters. Morrison left looking troubled. Walter didn't watch him go. He just sat there on the step hammer at his feet trying to feel something. Grief, rage, anything. Nothing came. That night he didn't sleep. He sat at the kitchen table with a bottle of whiskey he'd been saving for no particular occasion and drank until the sun came up. Margaret's face watched him from the mantel, and he talked to her like she could hear. I got them killed, Maggie. Sent them away thinking I was saving them, and I just delivered them to something worse. She didn't answer. She never did anymore. They trusted me. Dylan, Marcus, even that scared kid Jake. They trusted me to do right by them, and I failed. Just like I failed David. Just like I'm failing at everything that matters. The whiskey burned, but not enough. I'm tired. So goddamn tired. Tired of losing people. Tired of being the one left standing when everyone I care about ends up in the ground. He poured another glass. Maybe that's my curse. Maybe I'm supposed to outlive everyone, watch them all go, while I just keep breathing, keep waking up, keep pretending any of it means something. Dawn came cold and gray. Walter finally fell asleep at the table, his head on his arms, the bottle empty beside him. He woke to pounding on his door. His head throbbed. His mouth tasted like death. The pounding continued, insistent, angry. I'm coming, he called, his voice raw. He opened the door and found a woman standing there. Mid-30s, dark hair pulled back, eyes red from crying. Behind her stood a teenage girl, maybe 15, with the same dark hair and the same devastated expression. Are you Walter Hayes? The woman demanded. I am. I'm Rebecca Carter, Dylan's sister. This is his daughter, Emma. Walter's heart stopped. Daughter. He never told you. Oh, I guess he wouldn't. Wasn't exactly father of the year. Rebecca's voice was bitter. Can we come in? We drove 6 hours. I need to talk to you. Walter stepped aside, numb. They entered, and Emma immediately went to the window, staring out at the farm with hollow eyes. Rebecca sat at the kitchen table without being invited. They told me my brother died in an accident, but the funeral home said there wasn't enough left to bury. Just ash and metal. They're giving me an urn. I'm sorry. Are you? 'Cause the last time I talked to Dylan, he told me he'd found something. Said he was working on a farm in Montana helping some old man. Said for the first time in his life, he felt like he was doing something that mattered. She looked up at Walter. Was that you? Were you the old man? Yes. Then you're the reason he's dead. The words hit like a physical blow. Walter deserved them, knew he deserved them, but hearing them out loud still made something crack inside. Emma turned from the window. Mom, don't. Your father died because he got involved with the wrong people. Again, just like always. And this man, this stranger, he led him, encouraged him, got him killed. You don't know that, Emma said quietly. What else am I supposed to think? Walter sat down across from Rebecca. You're right, it's my fault, all of it. Your brother came here running from trouble, and I gave him shelter. Let him stay. Let him think he could have a different life. Then I sent him away and he died. So yes, it's my fault. Rebecca stared at him. Just like that, you're not going to defend yourself. How can I? 7 men are dead because of choices I made. Your brother trusted me. I failed him. There's no defending that. Something in Rebecca's face shifted. The anger didn't leave, but something else crept in. Confusion. Maybe even sympathy. Dylan called me 2 days before he died, she said quietly. First time he'd called in 3 years. He told me about you, about the farm, about fighting off some gang. Said you were the bravest man he'd ever met. Said you reminded him of what he could be if he just tried harder. Walter's throat tightened. He wanted to come back here. Said he was going to wait a few months, let things cool down, then come back and help you rebuild. He was excited about it. I'd never heard him excited about anything except the club. Rebecca's voice broke. So no, I don't think it's your fault. I think my brother found something worth living for, and someone took it away from him. The Brotherhood, Walter said. You think they did this? I know they did. Can't prove it, but I know. Emma moved closer. My dad talked about you on the phone. Said you were like a grandfather to him. Said you made him feel like he could be good again. Walter looked at this girl, this piece of Dylan walking and breathing and carrying her father's eyes, and felt tears start. He was good. He was always good. He just didn't believe it. Will you tell me about him, about what happened here? And Walter did. He told him everything. The barn, the coffee, the fight, the stand they made together. He told them about Dylan's courage, his leadership, the way he protected his brothers, while protecting an old man who had no claim on his loyalty. Rebecca cried. Emma held her mother's hand, and Walter felt something he hadn't felt since they'd ridden away. Purpose. I'm going to find out what really happened, he said, and I'm going to make it right. How? Rebecca asked. You're one old man. They're a whole organization. I've faced worse odds. That's insane. You'll get yourself killed. Maybe, but I owe your brother more than just sitting here feeling sorry for myself. Emma spoke up. I want to help. Absolutely not, Rebecca said immediately. Mom, he was my father. Your father who abandoned you when you were 3. Your father who chose his club over his family. Over you. Rebecca's voice was sharp. I'm not losing you too. You're not losing me. I'm right here. But I need to do this. I need to know what happened to him. I need it to mean something. Walter watched them, mother and daughter grief pulling them in different directions. He thought of Margaret, of how she'd held him together when he came back from the war, full of rage and ghosts. How she'd never given up on him, even when he'd given up on himself. Rebecca, he said gently, your daughter doesn't want revenge. She wants truth. There's a difference. Truth gets people killed too. So does ignorance. So does letting evil go unchallenged because we're afraid. He met Emma's eyes. But she's right about one thing. This is dangerous. If you help me, you could get hurt. Your mother could lose you. That's not a risk I can ask you to take. Emma's jaw set in a way that reminded him painfully of Dylan. You're not asking. I'm choosing. Emma, Mom, I never knew him. You made sure of that. You had reasons, good reasons, probably, but the result is the same. He was a stranger to me, and then he teased, and I'm supposed to just accept it. Move on. Pretend like I didn't lose the chance to ever know who he was. Her voice shook. Mr. Hayes is offering me something. A way to understand. Maybe even a way to make his death matter. I'm taking it. Rebecca looked at Walter. If something happens to her, it won't. I promise you, I'll protect her like she's my own blood. You couldn't protect my brother. The words hung there, cruel and true. No, Walter said quietly. I couldn't, but I can learn from that. I can do better. If you'll let me try. Rebecca stood up, paced to the window, stood where her daughter had stood. For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then 2 weeks. You have 2 weeks to find out what happened. After that, Emma comes home. No arguments. No excuses. Understood. Understood. And you keep her safe. You call me every day. You don't let her do anything stupid. I won't. Rebecca turned back and her face was steel and tears mixed together. Then find out who killed my brother. And when you do, you make damn sure they pay for it. That night, Emma slept in the guest room, the one Margaret had kept ready for David when he'd visit. Rebecca had left reluctant and terrified, but trusting Walter because she had no other choice. Walter sat on the porch, coffee growing cold in his hands, and called the one person he thought might help. Marcus answered on the third ring. Walter, his voice was shocked. How are you calling me we're dead? I know what the news says, but I'm guessing you're not actually dead, are you? Silence. Then how'd you figure it out? Because Dylan's sister showed up today. They told her there wasn't enough left to bury. But I know Dylan. He wouldn't have died easy. None of you would have. And a truck driver who just happens to have brake failure at the exact moment you're passing, that's not an accident. That's a setup. You're smarter than you look, old man. Where are you? Can't tell you that. Safer if you don't know. Marcus, I need the truth. All of it. More silence. Then Marcus sighed. We made it about 200 miles. Stopped at a diner. Dylan went to the bathroom, came back white as a sheet, said he'd gotten a call, anonymous, said the Brotherhood had put a price on our heads. Every chapter in 3 states was looking for us. We were marked. So you faked your deaths. We had a friend, guy who owed Dylan a favor. He arranged it. Stole a semi, rigged the brakes to fail at a specific spot, made sure the crash would be big enough to destroy evidence. Then he gave us new IDs and we scattered. 7 different directions. Safer that way. Dylan's daughter is here. She wants answers. Jesus. Dylan has a daughter. He never told you. Never. He didn't talk about his past. Any of it. Walter processed this. Where's Dylan now? I don't know. That was the deal. We split up. Don't contact each other. Don't leave trails. If the Brotherhood finds one of us, they can't find the others. But you could reach him if you had to. Maybe. Why? Because his daughter deserves to know he's alive. And because I need his help. Help with what? Bringing down the Brotherhood. Ending this. Making sure no one else has to run, has to hide, has to fake their own death just to stay breathing. Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's suicide, Walter. Probably, but I'm 97. How much longer do I have anyway? Might as well go out doing something that matters. You're serious. Completely. And Dylan's daughter, she's in on this. She wants to help. She's a kid. This is insane. She's 15, old enough to make her own choices, old enough to handle the truth. Marcus was quiet for so long Walter thought he'd hung up. Then I'll reach out to Dylan, tell him what's happening. But Walter, listen to me. The Brotherhood isn't just some motorcycle club. They've got connections. Politicians, cops, judges. You go after them, you're not just fighting bikers. You're fighting a whole system. Then we fight the system. You're going to get yourself killed. You're going to get Dylan's daughter killed. You're going to get all of us killed. Maybe. Or maybe we actually win. Maybe we prove that sometimes the good guys don't have to run. Don't have to hide. Don't have to accept that evil wins just because it's strong. You sound like a crazy person. I've been called worse. Walter stood up, his decision made. Tell Dylan to come home. Tell him it's time to stop running. Tell him his daughter needs him. Tell him I need him. Tell him whatever you have to, but get him here. And if he says no, he won't. I know him. He'll come. Marcus hung up without another word. Walter went inside, checked on Emma. She was asleep, curled up under Margaret's quilt, looking younger than 15, looking like the child she still was, underneath the bravado. He thought about Rebecca's words, about how he'd failed Dylan, about how he might fail Emma too. But the alternative was doing nothing, letting the Brotherhood win, letting them take everything and everyone he cared about without consequence. That wasn't living. That was just waiting to die. 3 days passed. Emma helped around the farm, asking questions, learning about her father through Walter's stories. He told her about Dylan's courage, his loyalty, the way he'd stood up when it mattered most. He didn't tell her about the fear he'd seen in Dylan's eyes, about the nightmares that had woken him screaming in the night, about the scars visible and invisible that Dylan had carried. Some truths could wait. On the 4th day, a motorcycle pulled into the driveway. Walter knew before he saw the rider's face. Knew from the way the bike moved, the way it stopped, the careful silence of someone who'd learned to be cautious. Dylan dismounted and pulled off his helmet. He looked different, hair cut short, clean-shaven, no club colors. But his eyes were the same, and when he saw Walter on the porch, something in them broke. "You stubborn old bastard," Dylan said, his voice rough. "You couldn't just let me stay dead. Never been good at letting go." They stood there 20 feet apart, 2 men who'd become something more than friends, something closer to family. Then Emma appeared in the doorway. Dylan froze. "Emma, His voice was barely a whisper. She stared at him, this stranger who was her father, this ghost who just walked back into life. You're alive. I'm alive. Mom said you died. I did. Legally. It was safer that way. Safer for who? The question hung between them like an accusation. Dylan took a step forward. For you, for your mother, for everyone I'd ever put in danger just by existing. He stopped. I know I wasn't a father to you. I know I gave up that right a long time ago. But I never stopped thinking about you. Never stopped wondering if you were okay, if you were happy, if you were growing up to be the kind of person I never could be. And what kind of person is that? Good, normal, safe. Emma's laugh was bitter. I'm none of those things. I'm angry all the time. I fight at school. Mom's worried I'm turning into you. She crossed her arms. Guess she was right. Dylan's face crumpled. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. For leaving, for not being there, for being the reason you're angry. I don't want your apologies. I want to know why. Why what? Why you left? Why you chose a motorcycle club over your own daughter? Why I wasn't enough to make you stay? And there it was. The question that had been eating at her for 15 years. The wound that had never healed because it had never been acknowledged. Dylan sank down on the porch steps, and Walter saw him not as the strong leader, not as the brave fighter, but as a broken man facing the consequences of his worst choices. I was 19 when you were born, Dylan said quietly. 19, scared and completely unprepared to be a father. Your mother was 21. We were kids playing house, and when you came along, reality hit hard. Emma sat down beside him, not touching, but close enough. I tried, I really did, but I was angry at the world, angry at myself, angry at a future that felt like a cage closing in. The club offered me something. Brotherhood, purpose, a place where I could be useful instead of useless. So I took it. I chose it. And I chose it over you. That's it. That's your reason. That's my reason. Selfish, stupid, unforgivable, but true. They sat in silence, father and daughter, connected by blood and separated by years of absence. Then Emma said, Mr. Hayes told me you fought for him, that you risked your life to defend this place. I did. Why fight for a stranger when you wouldn't fight for your own family? Dylan looked at Walter, then back at his daughter. Because he gave me a chance to be better than I was. He looked at me and saw something worth saving. Nobody had done that in a long time, maybe never. I would have, if you'd stayed. I know, and I'll regret not knowing that for the rest of my life. Walter cleared his throat. I hate to interrupt, but we've got bigger problems than family therapy. The Brotherhood thinks you're dead. That's good, that's an advantage. But they're still out there, still dangerous, and still killing anyone who gets in their way. We need to stop them. Dylan looked up. How? We take them down from the inside. We gather evidence. We build a case. We hand them over to the FBI and watch them burn. You make it sound simple. It's not. It's probably impossible, but it's all we've got. Emma stood up. Then let's get started. Dylan grabbed her arm. No, absolutely not. This is too dangerous. She yanked free. You don't get to tell me what to do. You gave up that right 15 years ago. Emma. My whole life, I've been the daughter of a man who chose violence over family. Well, guess what? Now I get to choose too, and I'm choosing this. I'm choosing to help. I'm choosing to matter. Dylan looked helplessly at Walter. Tell her this is insane. It is insane, Walter agreed, but she's right. She gets to choose. Just like you did. Just like I did. Free will cuts both ways. Dylan stood up, paced, ran his hands through his short hair. If something happens to her, if she gets hurt, then we live with it, same as we live with everything else. Walter's voice was firm. But we don't stop her from fighting just because fighting is dangerous. We teach her to fight smart. We protect her the best we can, and we trust that she's stronger than we give her credit for. Emma looked at her father with something like hope in her eyes. Please, let me do this. Let me help. Dylan stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly, reluctantly. Okay, but we do this my way, my rules. You follow orders, you stay safe, and if I say run, you run. No arguments, no heroics. Deal. Deal. They shook on it, and Walter saw something pass between them. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the beginning of understanding. the start of something that could become a relationship if they survived long enough. So, Dylan said, turning to Walter, how do we take down the Brotherhood? Walter smiled, cold and determined. Simple. We make them think they've already won. The plan was simple in theory, impossible in practice. Walter would approach Reaper, directly offer himself as an informant. An old man angry at Dylan for abandoning him, willing to sell information about where the other bikers might have gone before they died. It was believable. People betrayed each other for less. Dylan hated it immediately. They'll kill you the second you walk in there. Maybe. Or maybe they'll see an opportunity. Walter was cleaning his rifle, his hand steady. Reaper knows I have military experience. Knows I'm capable. He might think I'm useful. Or he might think you're a threat and put a bullet in your head. That's why you'll be watching, listening. The second it goes wrong, you pull me out. Emma looked up from the laptop where she'd been researching Brotherhood properties. How if you're inside their clubhouse surrounded by 50 armed men, how does he pull you out? Carefully, Walter said. Dylan slammed his hand on the table. This is insane. We need a real plan, something that doesn't rely on you walking into a death trap. You have a better idea. Yes, we don't do this at all. We stay hidden. We stay alive. And they keep dealing drugs, keep destroying families, keep killing anyone who stands up to them. Walter set the rifle aside. I didn't survive 97 years to spend my last days hiding. I'm doing this, with you or without you. Father and daughter exchanged a look. He's as stubborn as you, Emma said. Worse, Dylan muttered. Then to Walter, fine, but we do this smart. No cowboys, no heroics. You wear a wire, we get evidence. The second we have enough to hand to the FBI, you're out. Understood. Understood. They spent 2 days preparing. Dylan called in favors, got his hands on recording equipment, small enough to hide, sophisticated enough to actually work. Emma researched every member of the Brotherhood's leadership, building profiles, finding weaknesses, mapping connections. Walter just waited, calm and certain, like a man who'd already made peace with whatever came next. On the third day, he drove to the Brotherhood's clubhouse alone. It was a squat building on the edge of town, bars on the windows, motorcycles lined up outside like a metal garden. Walter parked his truck and sat for a moment, listening to the wire hidden under his shirt transmit his breathing to Dylan 2 blocks away. I'm here, he said quietly. Dylan's voice crackled in the tiny earpiece. You can still turn around. No, I can't. Walter got out and walked toward the door. 2 men stopped him immediately, both armed, both looking at him like he was an insect that had wandered into the wrong habitat. I'm here to see Reaper, Walter said. He expecting you. No, but he'll want to hear what I have to say. Yeah, what's that? Information about Dylan Carter, about where his crew was headed before they died. The 2 men looked at each other. One disappeared inside. The other kept his gun trained on Walter, casual and ready. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Finally, the door opened. Reaper stood there, his expression unreadable. Walter Hayes, you've got some balls showing up here. I've got information you want. And why would you give it to me? Because Dylan used me, lied to me, made me think he was something he wasn't. Then he left, took off without even a thank you, and got himself killed being stupid. Walter's voice was bitter, and it wasn't entirely an act. I figure if he was working against you, you deserve to know what he was planning. Reaper studied him for a long moment. Then he stepped aside. Come in, but if this is a setup, you'll be dead before you hit the ground. Understood. Walter walked into the clubhouse and into the belly of the beast. Inside it smelled like cigarettes and stale beer and violence waiting to happen. Men sat around tables playing cards, drinking cleaning weapons. They all stopped and stared when Walter entered. Reaper led him to a back office, closed the door. Just the 2 of them now. Talk, Reaper said. Walter sat down without being invited. Dylan and his crew, they weren't just running from you. They were planning something, a retaliation. He told me about it before he left. What kind of retaliation? He had contacts, people in law enforcement. He was going to feed them information about your operations, locations, dealers, money routes, everything. Reaper's expression didn't change. And he told you this, why? Because he thought I'd help, thought the old veteran would jump at the chance to take down the big bad bikers. Walter laughed bitterly. I told him to go to hell. I don't care about his crusade. I just wanted my farm left alone. So why come here now? Why tell me this? Because he's dead and I figure the information still has value. To you, if not to him. What do you want in exchange? My mortgage payment. $10,000. The money you made me pay you, I need it back. Farm's about to go under without it. Reaper leaned back in his chair. You want me to pay you for information about a dead man's plans that died with him? I want you to pay me for peace of mind. For knowing that even dead Dylan can't hurt you. For knowing his contacts, his plans, his entire network. Walter met his eyes. Unless you're confident enough that nothing he set in motion is still ticking. Your call. The silence stretched. Then Reaper smiled. You're good. Better than I expected. I've been negotiating since before you were born. Tell me about these contacts, names, departments. And Walter did. He fed Reaper false information. Dylan had prepared names of fictional agents, fake investigation timelines, all of it designed to sound real enough to be believed, vague enough to be useless. Reaper listened, asked questions, probed for inconsistencies. Walter didn't slip once. Finally, Reaper stood up. Okay, I believe you. Mostly. But before I pay you anything, you're going to prove your loyalty. How? There's a shipment coming in tomorrow night. Merchandise, we're moving through the state. I want you there. I want you to see how we operate, and I want to see if you've got the stomach for what we do. Walter's heart sank, but his face stayed neutral. What kind of merchandise? The kind you don't ask questions about. You in or out? This was the moment, the line he couldn't uncross. I'm in. Good. Be here tomorrow at 8. And Walter. Reaper's smile was cold. If this is a trap, if you're wearing a wire, if you've got cops waiting somewhere, I'll make sure your death takes days, not minutes. Clear. Crystal. Walter left the clubhouse and drove until he was out of sight, then pulled over. His hands were shaking now, adrenaline finally catching up. Dylan's voice in his ear. You okay? Fine, they bought it. You're not fine, your heart rate's through the roof. I said I'm fine. Walter took a breath. They want me at a shipment tomorrow night. Drugs probably, maybe guns. I have to be there. No, absolutely not. We've got enough. We cut and run. We don't have anything. I didn't get names, locations, nothing concrete, just talk. The FBI won't move on talk. Walter, tomorrow night, one more night, then we're done. He drove back to the farm where Emma was waiting, her face pale. I heard everything, she said. The laptop was still open, still recording. You can't go tomorrow, it's too dangerous. I have to. Why does it have to be you? Because I'm the only one they'll believe. The only one who can get close enough to matter. Dylan came in through the back door, his face dark. This is over. We're done. I'm not letting you walk into a drug deal surrounded by armed criminals. You don't get to let me do anything. I'm doing it. You stubborn. Yes, I'm stubborn. We've established that. Now either help me or get out of my way. They stared at each other, two stubborn men, neither willing to back down. Emma spoke quietly. What if there was another way? They both looked at her. What way? Dylan asked. What if we didn't wait for tomorrow night? What if we hit them now tonight, while they're not expecting it? Hit them how? The clubhouse. You said there's maybe 20 guys there on a normal night. We call the FBI, tell them there's a drug deal happening right now. They raid the place, find whatever's there, and the Brotherhood goes down without Walter having to risk his life again. Walter shook his head. The FBI won't move without evidence. An anonymous tip isn't enough. Then we give them evidence. We break in. We plant cameras. We get footage of whatever illegal stuff they're doing, then we hand it over. Breaking and entering. Great plan, Dylan said sarcastically. You have a better one. He didn't. They spent the next hour arguing, planning, discarding ideas, building new ones. By the time night fell, they had something that might work. Might get them all killed, but might work. Dylan would create a distraction. A fire at one of the Brotherhood's drug houses across town. Small, contained, but enough to pull most of the muscle away from the clubhouse. While they were gone, Walter and Emma would slip in through the back plant cameras in the office, the meeting room, anywhere deals were made or money was counted. They'd be in and out in 10 minutes. Dylan hated every second of it, but he couldn't argue with the logic. At 11 that night, they moved. Dylan set the fire with professional precision, made sure it looked accidental, then called it in anonymously. Within minutes, sirens wailed. Within 10, the clubhouse emptied as bikers roared off to protect their assets. Walter and Emma waited in the darkness behind the building. "You ready?" Walter whispered. "No, but let's do it anyway." They slipped through the back window Walter had noticed during his visit. Inside the clubhouse was dim quiet, just two men left behind to watch the place. Emma moved like a ghost, planting tiny cameras in corners under tables behind picture frames. Walter kept watch, his heart hammering, feeling older than he ever had. They were almost done when they heard voices. "Telling you something's wrong, that fire was too convenient." Walter grabbed Emma, pulled her into a closet. They pressed against the back wall, barely breathing as footsteps approached. The door handle turned. Walter's hand went to the knife at his belt, ready to do whatever it took to protect Dylan's daughter. The door opened. Light flooded in. And then a voice said, "Well, well, what do we have here?" It was Cutter, his face healing from the burns he'd gotten at Walter's farm, his eyes full of recognition and rage. "Thought you looked familiar at the meeting, old man. Couldn't place you at first. Then I remembered, the farmer who blew up my crew." Walter stepped in front of Emma. "Let the girl go. She's not part of this." "The hell she isn't. She's leverage." Cutter pulled a gun. "Both of you out, now." They had no choice. They walked out of the closet into the main room where the two guards waited, both armed, both grinning like they'd just won the lottery. "Call Reaper," Cutter said. "Tell him we caught ourselves some rats." One of the guards pulled out his phone. Walter calculated odds, distances, escape routes. All of them ended with someone dead, probably him, possibly Emma. Then Emma did something unexpected. She started laughing. Everyone stared at her. "You think you caught us?" she said, still laughing. "You think this was an accident?" "Shut up, kid. My father isn't dead. Dylan Carter is alive, and he's been watching you this entire time. He knows everything. Where you cook, where you deal, who you pay off. And in about 5 minutes, the FBI is going to come through that door with warrants and guns and the end of everything you've built." Cutter's face went white. "You're lying." "Am I? Check your phone, check the news. Your drug house is burning, but that wasn't an accident. That was a signal, a countdown." The guard with the phone looked down, started scrolling. His expression changed. "Boss, there's cops everywhere. The fire department found chemicals. They're calling it a meth lab." "What? It's all over the scanner. They're requesting DEA backup." Cutter turned to Emma. "You set us up. We set you up. My father, Walter, me, all of us. And now you've got a choice. You can kill us, and when the FBI gets here, you'll have 2 more bodies to explain. Or you can run, right now, before it's too late." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then sirens sounded in the distance, growing closer. Cutter swore viciously. "Move everyone out. Burn it all." The guards scattered. Cutter backed toward the door, his gun still trained on Walter. "This isn't over." "Yes," Walter said quietly. "It is. You just don't know it yet." Cutter ran. Walter grabbed Emma's hand and they fled out the back, into the darkness, into the chaos of bikers scattering like roaches when the lights came on. They made it to Walter's truck, drove 3 blocks, then pulled over and just sat there shaking. "That was the stupidest, bravest thing I've ever seen," Walter said finally. "I learned from the best," Emma managed. Dylan's voice crackled over the radio. "Tell me you made it out." "We made it," Walter said. "The FBI. Emma's bluff, but the fire at the drug house was real enough. They'll find evidence there, enough to start asking questions. And the cameras. Planted. If the clubhouse doesn't burn down in the next 10 minutes, we'll have footage of everything they do." Dylan was quiet for a moment, then, "My daughter bluffed the Iron Brotherhood. Like a professional. Jesus, she really is my kid." Emma smiled despite herself. They met back at the farm as dawn broke. Dylan pulled his daughter into a hug that lasted a full minute, holding her like she might disappear. "Don't ever do that again," he said into her hair. "Okay. I mean it. I can't lose you. Not now that I just got you back." "I know." They sat on the porch, the 3 of them watching the sun climb higher, burning away the night. "What happens now?" Emma asked. "Now we wait," Walter said. "We watch. We see if the cameras give us what we need. And if they do, then we hand it to the FBI and we watch the Brotherhood burn." It took 3 days, 3 days of waiting, of watching footage, of seeing deal after deal, crime after crime, documented in high definition. On the 4th day, Walter called a number Dylan had given him. FBI field office in Helena, asked to speak to someone in organized crime. The agent who answered sounded bored until Walter started describing what he had. Then the boredom disappeared, replaced by sharp interest. How did you obtain this footage? Does it matter? It might, Summers. Let's say a concerned citizen was in the wrong place at the right time. Are you interested or not? The agent was interested. 2 hours later, federal agents descended on the Iron Brotherhood's clubhouse with warrants, arrest teams, and the full weight of the law behind them. Walter, Dylan, and Emma watched it on the news from the safety of the farm. 47 arrests, enough evidence to put Reaper and Cutter away for 20 years minimum. Drug operations shut down across 3 states. The Iron Brotherhood broken. We did it, Emma whispered. You did it, Walter corrected. That bluff of yours bought us the time we needed. She leaned against her father, and he wrapped his arm around her, and for the first time in 15 years, they looked like what they were supposed to be. Family. Sheriff Morrison came by that evening, his expression caught between respect and exasperation. I don't know what you did, he said to Walter, and I probably don't want to know, but whatever it was, you just made Montana a lot safer. Just defending my property, Walter said innocently. Sure you were. Morrison tipped his hat. You're a menace, Walter Hayes, but you're our menace. After he left, they sat in the kitchen, coffee growing cold, exhaustion settling in. What now? Dylan asked. I'm legally dead. Can't exactly go back to my old life. So build a new one, Walter said. Here, with your daughter, with me. We make this farm work again. Together. You'd want that after everything. Son, you're the closest thing to family I've got left. Of course I want that. Emma looked at her father. What about Mom? Your mother deserves to know the truth. That I'm alive. That I want to be part of your life if she'll let me. Dylan's voice was uncertain. Think she'd even consider it? Only one way to find out. Rebecca came the next day. Dylan met her in the driveway, and they talked for an hour while Walter and Emma pretended not to watch from the window. When they came inside, Rebecca's eyes were red, but her expression was softer than Walter had seen. He wants to stick around, she said to Emma. Help with the farm. Be close enough to see you regularly if that's what you want. It is, Emma said immediately. Then I guess we're doing this. But Dylan, you hurt her again, you disappear again, and I will hunt you down myself. Clear. Crystal. Good. She left, but not before hugging Walter and whispering, thank you for giving him a chance to be better. Months passed. The farm slowly came back to life. Dylan and Walter rebuilt what had fallen apart, working side by side in a comfortable silence that spoke louder than words. Emma visited every weekend, and slowly, carefully, she and her father built something new. Not the relationship they'd lost, but something different, something earned. One evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Dylan spoke quietly. I never thanked you for saving my life, for giving me this chance. You've thanked me every day, by being here, by trying. That's all the thanks I need. Still, you could have turned us away that first morning, should have turned us away. But you didn't. Why? Walter thought about it, about Margaret, about David, about all the people he'd loved and lost. Because everybody deserves a chance to be more than their worst moment. Margaret taught me that. And because sometimes the people who look most dangerous are just the people who've been hurt most deeply. You think we're good people, really. I think you're trying to be. That's what matters. They sat in silence, watching the sky turn gold, then orange, then purple. Emma came out carrying a tray of coffee, and she settled between them like she belonged there, like she'd always belonged there. Grandpa Walter, she said, testing the words. Walter smiled. I like the sound of that. Me too. Dylan put his arm around his daughter, and Walter reached over and squeezed his shoulder. And for the first time in years, the old farmhouse felt like a home again. Not because the structure had changed, but because the people inside it had. They'd fought for each other, bled for each other, risked everything for each other. And in the end, they'd proven that family wasn't about blood or obligation or tradition. It was about showing up, about standing together, about choosing every single day to be there when it mattered most. Walter Hayes was 97 years old, and he'd finally learned the truth that had eluded him his entire life. You don't find family, you build it, one choice at a time, one act of courage at a time, one moment of grace at a time. And once you've built it, you protect it with everything you have, because that's what love demands, and that's what being human means. The farm stood against the Montana sky, no longer dying, no longer forgotten. It stood as a testament to second chances, to unlikely friendships, to the truth that sometimes the most broken people are the ones who know best how to heal each other. And inside that farmhouse, three people who'd found each other against all odds sat together in the gathering darkness, drinking coffee, telling stories, and proving that hope wasn't naive and goodness wasn't weakness, and standing up for what mattered could actually impossibly change the world.